What's going on, everybody? Welcome on into another episode of On Air. I am your host, Chris Shanafel, doing a quick pop-up show as we have some players to discuss, some new players, some new members of the Chicago Bears as the team claimed a NFL high 7 players off of waivers. Those players being defensive end Kingsley Jonathan, defensive back Josh Blackwell, defensive tackle Armon Watts, linebacker Sterling Weatherford, tight end Trevin Wesco, wide receiver Amir Smith Marset, and last but not least, former 2021 first-round draft pick, offensive tackle Alex Leatherwood, who was recently placed on waivers from the Las Vegas Raiders. And that's who we're going to discuss today, get to know a little about today, this evening, with a good friend of the program. He is Luke Straub, and he joins the show now. He is the host or co-host of the Raiders in Paradise podcast. And again, Luke joins the show now. Luke, how's it going, man?
Hey, it's going great. Thanks for having me on. It's been too long.
It's been way too long. You are my go-to when we get anything Raiders news worthy. And as a Bears fan, the last few years, there's been quite a bit of news. Last time, or one of the first times we spoke, Luke, we were talking about the Bears acquiring Khalil Mack from the Raiders. Now, it might not be that type of a player that the Bears are acquiring this go around, but Alex Leatherwood, I mean, it's not very often you see a first-round pick from just a year ago placed on waivers. Ian Rappaport did say that the Raiders try to call all 31 teams in the NFL to see if they can get anything for Leatherwood. That did not happen, so they decided to just cut bait. Bears were the lone team to claim him, to put a claim in on him. This, of course, is the last first-round draft pick from the Mike Mayock era. I remember when Leatherwood was drafted in the 2021 NFL draft, many thought that it was a reach. And even if it was a reach, Luke, I mean, nobody could have predicted that 16 months later that he would be released. Where did it all go wrong here with Alex Leatherwood? And do you think that this is a waiver claim that the Bears could eventually benefit from?
Yeah, and I think the key word there is eventually, right? I mean, I think if you want to look at where it all went wrong with the Raiders and Leatherwood, it was right from the start, unfortunately. You have, like you said, he was a reach. We panned him on the podcast, on the Rip, on the Raiders in Paradise podcast. What else could you do? It was a textbook reach. He was supposed to be a guard, second-round grade by most accounts, but the Raiders selected him. And not only did they select him high, but they, of course, wanted him to start right away at right tackle, a position where most did not have him projected to play at all. And then you compound that with his environment. Tom Cable, offensive line coach, people have mixed opinions on him. But what I'm more talking about is the rest of the offensive line was also no good. He was playing next to a first-year center, Andre James, who is a suspect player, and he was playing next to Brandon Parker at right tackle. Once Leatherwood moved to guard, once he failed at tackle with the Raiders, moved to guard. So you had super high expectations, unrealistic expectations once he was on the field. No real veteran offensive lineman to help him along except for Colton Miller. And his skill set, his play on the field just steadily deteriorated. It was kind of incredible to watch. And he was, quite frankly, visibly, obviously very bad. And it only got worse. Doesn't mean he has a lot of upside, which is, of course, why the Bears snatched him up.
You mentioned Colton Miller. I remember when the Raiders selected him. He was a guy that had, a lot of people were kind of scratching their heads at when he was selected, and he was a player that struggled very early on in his rookie season, ended up figuring it out, probably the best offensive lineman on the team now. Was there ever any thought that, okay, these are just some early struggles with Leatherwood, eventually he'll figure it out? Or how similar, if at all, were those two situations?
We wanted them to be very similar. And on paper, they're, of course, very similar. And there were some of those thoughts, like, hey, it took Colton Miller a minute. Like you said, that's how it went. Absolutely. But when you looked at Leatherwood play, it unfortunately did not give you the same feelings as when you watched Colton Miller play. And it I've I've honestly never seen, and this is why I kind of think it has to do with Leatherwood's environment. Not to say that the coaches were terrible, but they clearly didn't do a very good job with them, if you ask me. Because Colton Miller, I mean, he struggled, but he steadily, slowly got better, and you just didn't see that with Leatherwood. So there was hope for that at first, and of course we had us. We're holding on to that hope once this season started, but once the preseason started, it seemed pretty clear right away what was going on, and it seemed like a possibility that the impossible would happen, that they would waive their first round pick.
Now, you being somebody that follows the team very closely, Luke, how much of a surprise did this come? Because seeing the news the other day that he was placed on waivers, Leatherwood, that is, wasn't a huge surprise because it was kind of out there a week or two ago that this was a real possibility that either Leatherwood would get traded or that he would be waived, that he was going to be no longer a part of the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, a week or two ago when that news came out, that kind of seemed like a surprise to me and a lot of people, not covering or not watching the team very closely. When that news came out that, yeah, something's going to happen with Leatherwood a week or two ago, was that much of a surprise at all?
It wasn't a surprise that the rumors were there because, especially in today's environment, I ain't knocking it. It is what it is, and honestly, like anybody could see it. Like if you didn't know anything about football, you could sit down and watch the game and watch Alex Leatherwood if you wanted and be like, he's not very good. Or at the very least, he's struggling quite a bit, very obviously. So the rumors weren't a surprise, but me personally, I didn't think they would release him. I didn't think they would waive him for a couple of reasons. I mean, well, most notably two reasons. The Raiders needed depth. They really have nobody or very few offensive tackles. They kept a guy named Jackson Barton, who I am frankly not very familiar with. I just from this preseason, I know him. He played fairly well. But the Raiders, they kept a 7th-round pick from this year, Thayer Munford from Ohio State. So the depth was a thing. I thought, no way they're going to get rid of Leatherwood. Sure, he's not great, but he did start every game last year. Most of them at guard, sure, but for depth reasons. And then, of course, the dead cap money, which I have to thank the Bears for that. Took care of a good amount of dead cap money. And I thought there was no way anybody would claim him. Just like Ian Rappaport, you mentioned, he was surprised. I was surprised. So I thought because of the depth issues and the dead cap issues, I thought the Raiders would hang on to Leatherwood. But the reasons I thought they would hang on to him had nothing to do with what he looked like on the field. Based just off that alone, it wasn't surprising. But overall, I didn't think they pulled the trigger, and they did.
Now, there's bad play, and then there's obviously the person in the locker room. A situation like this, I remember when the Titans selected Isaiah Wilson, the offensive lineman out of Georgia. He didn't last very long. I think he lasted 1 year there, and I think he had a short stint with the Colts practice squad. I don't even think he's in the league anymore. This doesn't seem like an Isaiah Wilson type situation, though, where he was a cancer in the locker room. What about the person or the person inside the locker room? Alex Leatherwood may not be the greatest player, had his struggles with the Raiders. What can you tell us about the person, Alex Leatherwood?
Yeah, the Bears are getting a great guy, and that's really something that counts for a lot because of course, the Bears have to build him up. I mean, when I say his play deteriorated, it very much did. But a player loses confidence. He just lost confidence. But as far as his personality and his demeanor, honestly, he is like the perfect lineman as far as demeanor and how I'll say that Tom Cable, old Raiders O-line coach, he called Alex Leatherwood a nerd, okay? And it doesn't sound so great, but and he actually clarified those statements because he's like, look, he just puts his nose to the grindstone. He's well-read. He doesn't cause a fuss, just puts his head down and goes to work. Tom Cable also said that Alex Leatherwood loves to be great. And he has got, you can just look at his physique to get an idea of his work ethic. I mean, the guy is like 6'4", 6'5", well over 300 pounds. Oh, he doesn't look it. He looks svelte. He looks in shape. The guy's a hard worker. The guy wants to be great. He went to Alabama. And I think if he gets the right people to feed him the right information, to give him the right fundamentals. And really, I think it needs to be broken down to square one. If the Bears coaches can do that, combined with his temperament, I mean, he's going to give it all he got. He's got, and if he's got it, the Bears have a chance to bring it out in him. Because his temperament is great. I think he's a perfect lineman. Just nose to the grindstone, keeps his head down and works. He wants to be great, and he's in great shape. Can't ask for a whole lot more as far as that goes.
It's pretty funny because the way you just described Alex Leatherwood is how many would describe Tevin Jenkins, who a part of the same draft class, taken high in the second round, number 39 overall. The Bears trade up for last year. There was rumors circulating around him all offseason long that the Bears were taking calls. The Bears were calling around the league, trying to find a trade partner for him. And then today, Ryan Poles comes out, 2.5, 3 weeks ago, they move him to right guard. And now it looks like he's penciled in as the starting right guard after impressing there in the final 2 preseason games. So it seems like they have worked around Tevin Jenkins, and it seems like they've kind of rectified that situation. General manager Ryan Poles, former offensive lineman himself, has said that when Tevin Jenkins is out on the field, he makes us a better unit. So, you kind of cool down on the trade rumors there surrounding him. And hopefully they're able to do the same with Alex Leatherwood now coming over from the Las Vegas Raiders. And certainly expectations are now tampered, or they're not as high as they were there with the Raiders. He is a former first-round pick, though, from just a year ago. The Bears have him listed as both tackle and guard. It sounded like in the opening of the show, you think he's probably better suited off at guard. Is that right?
You kind of have to say so at this point. However, I mean, the guy is super physically gifted. I mean, really, he really is. You can see it on the field. It's pretty evident. And I read a great piece from Ted Wynn of The Athletic, who's a great X's and O's guy. He talked to a former All-Pro offensive lineman. Forget who that was exactly, but they just broke down his mechanics, his fundamentals, and they're just awful. I mean, so you really got a raw physical gift here, and I honestly think it's a great move for the Bears. I'm just going to say it because of the upside. The upside is tremendous, and that's another reason I thought maybe the Raiders could have kept him. And part of it was a regime change thing, right? I mean, let me backtrack a little bit and say that Josh McDaniels was talking versatility this, versatility that with the offensive line, playing guys all over the board, guard, tackle, even center a little bit. But Leatherwood, they just put him at right tackle and stuck him there. Seemed like they just threw him out there. We're like sink or swim, kid, and we're not going to give you a life preserver. That's what it seemed like to me. So I don't think that the Raiders were willing to invest into that potential upside. So I think he's got a potential at tackle. I do. Of course, that might not come to fruition. It was striking how bad he played at tackle. But he also didn't play very, very well at guard. Okay. I don't know if that's good news or bad news, but either way, he's got to improve. So I think if you need a tackle, might as well put him out there at tackle. He played left tackle at Alabama, for crying out loud. You can't be that far off with the proper coaching and proper schooling. I mean, no doubt.
Again, he's Luke Straub of the Raiders in Paradise podcast, joining us here on air talking Alex Leatherwood. And before we let you go, Luke, we got about 10, 12 minutes left with you. I want to get your thoughts on the Raiders just in general. I mean, they've been one of the more active teams this offseason. They've been they're in what was and will likely be, if they hold up to the expectations, the most exciting division, the AFC West. You got, of course, the Los Angeles Chargers, the Las Vegas Raiders, the Denver Broncos, and of course, let's not forget the Kansas City Chiefs. And as I just said, the Los Angeles Chargers. Excuse me. I gotta ask you actually before we focus on the Raiders. Khalil Mack, he's back in the division. Of course, it hurts me to see him leave the Chicago Bears. I now know how you felt 3-4 years ago.
Right.
But now he's back in the AFC West. You'll be seeing him not once but twice a season, playing opposite side of Joey Bosa.
Well.
Obviously, that was that move occurred very early on in the offseason. Has it settled yet? How's that going to be, seeing number 52 in the baby blue and yellow?
It's not going to be great. I'm not looking forward to that one. I mean, that was a saving grace of trading Khalil to Chicago. A little bit out of sight, of course, not completely, but it's disturbing. It does kind of bring back all those feelings about when the Raiders traded Khalil Mack, the best player they've had in quite a while. Going back to, I don't know, you want to go back to Tim Brown or Charles Woodson, perhaps, Nnamdi Asomugha, maybe. But as far as, I mean, defensive player of the year, former Raider on the Chargers, week 1 with Joey Bosa, you combine that with the Raiders' number one issue is offensive line still. That's another reason, it's tough for Leatherwood. Like I said, the depth issues, I already said that. But, I mean, I think we really probably could have kept him, should have kept him. But it's scary, Christian. It's scary, man. I don't like it, but I'm gonna have to see what happens.
Now, the Raiders did help out Bears fans this offseason as they acquired All-Pro, arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL, Davante Adams. Reunited now with Derek Carr, teammates at Fresno State. Obviously, Davante Adams had a hell of a career with the Green Bay Packers, and he actually, if I'm not mistaken, took less to be with the Raiders than to stay with Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. I think this absolutely opens the door wide open for Hunter Renfrow, who is already a hell of a player. I think he's due for a huge year this season. Just how much, I mean, are the expectations Super Bowl this season for the Raiders, Luke? Is that too much to say? I mean, it seems like every team in that division, it's Super Bowl or bust.
It's not too much to say. And Davante Adams, he said he wants that trophy at the end of this year. So the expectations are high, and it's a really wild situation, right? And it's a really fascinating team to cover, really fascinating division, because you can have a team like the Raiders have legitimate Super Bowl aspirations, and they're getting picked, I think, probably accurately so, to be like 4th in the division, maybe sometimes 3rd. So it's a fascinating scenario, but I think really and truly, Super Bowl is the goal. And it's a lofty goal, especially when you have a new scheme on offense, a new scheme on defense, a new coaching staff, a bunch of new players. But that is the goal. Funny enough, I think it's a good change. I think Davante Adams comes in and infuses that kind of energy, that desire for greatness, if you will, to use a kind of a Raider cliche. And I think it's a positive thing, Super Bowl or bust.
I think 4th in the division is a little too harsh. I know the Denver Broncos acquired Russell Wilson in the offseason. I think the Raiders are still above the Denver Broncos. Kansas City, really, I know they lost a bunch of pieces this offseason, headlined, of course, by Tyreek Hill going to Miami. But you got Patrick Mahomes there. I'm not ruling them out. And then, of course, the Chargers. Can they live up to the expectations? We will see. Luke, you had this interesting tweet that I seen pinned to your profile. Max Crosby loves Coach Rich Bisaccia, as he should. Stephen Curry loved Mark Jackson too. Said Mark was the man for the job. But the Warriors needed Steve Kerr. Raiders need to find their Steve Kerr. Luke, at the end of this season, at the end of next season, talking about Josh McDaniels, will the Raiders have found their Steve Kerr?
Boy, I hope so. I do hope so, man. And I'm going to say yes. I will answer the question straight up and say yes. And here's why. I was very impressed with, it's just preseason, but the demeanor of the Raiders squad from A to Z. You have big fish, small fries. Everybody in line, playing hard, no mistakes, knew the scheme. And Josh McDaniels has a ton to prove. We all know that. His time with the Broncos was pretty whack. I saw it firsthand. The Raiders mollywopped some of those teams when the Raiders were not very good at all. I mean, that was incredible. In fact, when the Raiders first hired McDaniels, I had to have a big hearty laugh because I was like, we hired this guy? I remember this guy. But when you step back and you look at his body of work, all the accolades, all the rings, very much like Steve Kerr, right? As far as Steve Kerr with his time as a player and with multiple teams. And you look at Josh McDaniels' offensive system, much like Steve Kerr infused into the Warriors, where they needed an offensive system badly. Mark Jackson taught them to play defense, but Steve Kerr brought in the offensive system. So you've got the pedigree, you've got the offensive system. And McDaniels has some Steph Curry-like pieces. Devontae Adams, Max Crosby, your boy, Max Crosby, right? So I'm I'm going to go with the yeah. And of course, there's a long way to go. But on the podcast, we have a continuing theme on the rip with me and my guy, Larry Marbley. We talk about, is Josh McDaniels the next Steve Kerr, or is he the next Norv Turner, who was a much celebrated offensive coordinator for the Cowboys? They came to the Raiders and laid a fat egg. So that's, of course, possibilities too. But I'm going with the yes. He's our Steve Kerr.
I love it. I love it. You need the optimism, and rightfully so, with just the talent on this team. Talking about players traded away, a few more minutes, and then we'll let you go, Luke. Talking about players that were traded away, it wasn't just Alex Leatherwood. The Raiders actually traded former second-round pick Trayvon Mullins to the Arizona Cardinals. That was a move that kind of caught me by surprise. I thought he was one of the better cornerbacks on the team. And I actually asked you about it once that trade went down, and you said that Mullins may not be the ideal scheme fit for the new Raiders defense. Is that really what it just came down to?
It seems like that is a piece of it. And I think really at the heart of it is the regime change combined, and that kind of goes with the scheme change, right? The regime change, I kind of lump that all together. I mean, any company, when they got a new head honcho coming in, some heads are going to roll if there's like a 50-50 decision. And also Mullen was injured, and the new staff didn't get to see him very much. Me personally, I don't think that has a lot to do with it, because there's film, right? You can watch film and see what he can do. But I think that given that Dave Ziegler brought in a couple cornerbacks that fit his scheme, Rock Ya-Sin, they traded Yannick Ngakoue for Rock Ya-Sin, a former Colt. They picked up Anthony Averett from the Ravens, who stepped up last year and had a pretty good year. I really like those two cornerbacks. I feel, and they have Nate Hobbs in the slot, do the Raiders. He's a very enticing, he's really good young player.
ILLINI.
Yeah, that's another one of your boys, right? I mean, he's incredible. I mean, he's really something. I think he could be I think they should play him on the outside, but that's another story, perhaps. Maybe it'll get to that point. But I think it was just the odd man out, Chris. With Mullen, I think it was just the odd man out combined with the scheme change. I mean, you've got a guy, Sam Webb, that made the Raiders 53-man roster. I mean, he's an undrafted free agent from a small school. You're perhaps familiar with him as well.
Missouri Western State.
Absolutely. So, I mean, it's just one of those things where, I mean, these guys got the job, Ziegler and McDaniels, and they're just calling the shots how they see them. And they're not going to give Mullen any kind of free pass, of course, even though I agree with you. I mean, I think he was one of the best corners on the roster. My guy Larry on the podcast, he is up in arms about that one. I don't blame him at all. But yeah, it's just one of those things. It's just a regime change. Sometimes you got to stomach those. And, I've done nothing but judge John Gruden's personnel moves. Well, Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler, now it's your turn, because these kind of moves, they got to work out. We'll see.
Right. Yeah, and obviously the Bears are in a similar situation, not with as much talent, but talking about a regime change. Luke, one last thing, and then I'll let you go. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about this player. Actually, let me. I just gotta get the entire.
Oh man, what's this gonna be? All right.
So I got Bears fans, and they're telling me I got to ask about this player. It's not the more bigger name, Bilal Nichols, that's on the team. I know he's starting the year off on PUP, if I'm not mistaken. But that would be Jesper Horsted, who actually caught one of Justin Fields' first touchdowns last season in Las Vegas. Jesper Horsted is like a fan favorite in Chicago. He had a hell of a career at Princeton. And again, with the coaching staff last year not playing Justin Fields right away with the starters, this was one of his go-to guys. A lot of people were upset when they let him go. I know you're probably just caught off guard that Jesper Horsted is being asked right now. Jesper Horsted, I was surprised pleasantly that he is actually still on the Raiders roster. Yep. What do you got on Jesper Horsted? How has he looked this offseason, training camp, preseason? What do you got?
He's looked great. And you know what? I didn't know any about that backstory. And I can see why the Bears fans are upset.
Three touchdowns he caught last year in a preseason game from Justin Fields against Tennessee.
I mean, those are the things that fans remember. That's real talk. I mean, 3 touchdowns. I don't care if you're Pee Wee, Pop Warner, or whatever, whatever level, junior college, don't matter.
That's right.
But I'll tell you what, Horsted really, I really noticed him in the Raiders game against, I believe it was the Dolphins in the preseason. And the Raiders' backup quarterback, Jared Stidham, was under a crazy amount of pressure. I mean, his helmet got knocked off and the whole thing, man. But Jesper Horsted was there for him, and perhaps a similar situation to what you're talking about here with Justin Fields last year. And he looks great. Looks like a great, like he knows how to get open. He looks like he's got great hands. Sure, he doesn't look like a bigger guy to me, but I think as far as the NFL tight end in 2022, I mean, hopefully the Bears fans don't regret it any longer. But I mean, biasly speaking, being biased, I hope he kind of rubs some salt in the wound, man, because he looks make some plays for the Raiders.
Hey, I just hope he doesn't turn into the next Greg Olsen. Obviously, Mike Martz traded Greg Olsen away to Carolina, and he turned into what may have been a Hall of Fame career. So we will see. Luke, really appreciate your time. Can talk Raiders, can talk NFL in general with you for hours and hours. Going to have to get you on very soon because there's so much more to talk about with this team. Haven't even gotten to Darren Waller. I mean, we bring up a tight end, and it ain't Darren Waller.
Right. And I was just going to say, I hope that Horsted doesn't turn into Greg Olsen either, because we already got a Greg Olsen. So it's all good. At least we agree on that one.
Luke, appreciate it so much, man. Before I let you go, please let the people know where they can check out your work and where they can check out your podcast.
Yeah, check out our podcast. It's called the Raiders in Paradise podcast. We're available wherever podcasts are found. Also, I'm in my 4th season writing for the Raiders Wire. So I'm a stringer there. Shout out to Marcus Mosher and Levi Damien, who do a lot of the heavy lifting. But you can find me there as well.
Hey, my go-to for Raiders information, Luke. Keep up the great work.
Thanks, my man. I had a great time being on.
Absolutely. There he goes. Luke Straub of the Raiders Wire and Raiders in Paradise podcast does a great job. Offers some great insight on the newest Bear, Alex Leatherwood, former first-round pick. And, again, really appreciate him. You can follow him on Twitter at Luke R. Straub. Again, a must-follow for all things Raiders, Warriors as well. And, again, check him out at the Raider Wire as well. So that was some great information on the newest Bear, Alex Leatherwood. Hopefully things pan out here in Chicago, at least better than they did with the Raiders. Touchdown Limestone. This is did this podcast while Limestone kicks off the season. They're playing Gardner Webb, and they just scored a touchdown. Unfortunately, they're trailing early on in the second quarter to Gardner Webb, 28-6. They just scored the touchdown, so the PAT is pending. But that's good news there for Limestone. Hopefully they get this game turned around. We will see. But again, special thanks to Luke Straub for joining the show. Again, great insight on Alex Leatherwood and just the Raiders team in general. Again, I'm going to have to get him on really soon because that's one of the more exciting teams, or expected to be one of the more exciting teams to watch this season. So definitely going to have to catch up with Luke soon. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. If you missed this podcast in its entirety, be sure to check it out on YouTube by searching On Air with Chris Shanafelt. Be sure to check it out on Spotify. Same thing, On Air with Chris Shanafelt, and iTunes. Same credentials as well. So appreciate everybody for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this show. Hope you learned a thing or two about Alex Leatherwood and the Las Vegas Raiders in general. So until next time, everybody, I'm Chris Shanafelt. Thanks for tuning in.